What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal here. I'm Jammin John.
Necrotic.
And we are bringing you yet another album review, and one to finally close out the week here. And we picked, I think, quite possibly the heaviest thing on the face of the planet to close out the week. So we are going to go over the latest offering from Mitochondrion with the album Vitreseptome. Vitreseptome? Vitreseptome? Vitreseptome?
There's going to be a lot of struggling.
Hey! This comes out on the 1st of November on Profound Lore Records. This band formed in 2003 in Vancouver, BC. This is their third full-length album, albeit their first full-length in 13 years. Parasygnosis came out in 2011. To be honest with you, I had to have heard this band somewhere. This is probably the first time I've sat down and listened to a full-length, but with the kind of music that I'm into personally, this is totally my alley.
I mean, with your love of dissonance and chug, I feel like that's possible. I don't know. I mean, if this is your first time listening to an album by Mitochondrion, man, did you pick, like, the heaviest one.
Mm-hmm.
I got into this band with their last album, Parasygnosis, and I thought that was insanely heavy, wall-to-wall dissonance, angular riffs. It's brutal. It's cavernous, it's unsettling. And that being said, I think this is even heavier and darker and meaner. Like, this is not starter death metal, blackened death metal, experimental death metal, whatever the hell you want to call it. Like, your buddy who says, oh, I listen to everything. Fuck that guy. He's absolutely insane. He won't listen to this. Unless you make him, which that'll be a fun social experiment.
Right. This record is beyond heavy, and I think quite possibly the definition of pure evil. This is the densest, heaviest thing I think I've ever heard, and that's a bold statement, but good God, is this thing heavy.
I mean, literally whatever album I said was the heaviest album that I listened to this year, which I know I've said it a couple of times, whatever those albums were have moved down a notch. Not only is this, like, just dense and suffocating and like kind of claustrophobic, like you feel surrounded by this album. This is easily their longest album. This is like just a few minutes shy of an hour and a half, and it is punishing through and through. The way this album is set up is like one continuous barrage with a couple of moments to kind of break it up. Like you have interlude tracks that have maybe made up words, I don't know, or combinations of words. But all these songs are just insanely heavy, and might as well just talk about like the production on here. I went back and jammed Parasygnosis before I, listened to this one multiple times, which might explain why I have like kind of a weird like 1,000-yard stare, because man, this is like an intense listen. And I wanted to compare the two, and this by far is way heavier, and the production here is easily like the most caustic they've had yet. This is just like impenetrable. Like, this is audio Kevlar. This could stop bullets. At its root, I mean, the guitars are punishingly heavy. The vocals are densely layered. Everyone in the band does vocals and kind of at the same time, so it sounds like a choir of demonic gorillas.
Yeah.
And you also have like this just punishing drum sound. This might be one of the most aggressive drum performances I think I've heard, but it's also intricate as hell. This band is as brutal and atmospheric as they are technical.
And the drum work reminds me a lot of Steve Shadley from Immolation. Like, the way this drummer plays, there are a bunch of, like, straightforward blasts, and there are some definite groovy pockets, but for the most part, it's super off time, and it's full of fills, just like Steve would do. It all just kind of flows that way drum-wise.
There's not a simple beat on here. Like, you have, like, stomping accents and such, but there's like frequent like jazzy fills, there's like weird off-time marching snare bits, and the frequent syncopation with the just flat-out monstrous, disgusting, atonal, dissonant riffs on here. It's just this barrage. Like, you are being assaulted by this album for a steady hour and a half. And like, in terms of it letting up, you only get like brief moments of like just like an atmospheric din every now and then it is back to just battery.
And even then, that atmospheric din is still haunting. In fact, the record sets up really well with the opening track, Malascension. Even though it's an interlude, like, it's immediately setting the tone for the record. Creepy swells of noise and whispers and just immediately unsettling. So as far as the tone being set, there it is, and that whole vibe doesn't leave the entire time.
And it's backwards.
Yep.
But don't worry, it's just as terrifying forwards, because as soon as In Creatum Vox kicks in, my God, dude, like angular riff after angular riff, like atonal harmonies or counter melodies.
Yeah.
I don't know how to like properly or technically describe what I'm hearing, but I can tell you that it is absolutely insane, dark, and dense as hell. In terms of like the big dynamic that I think really carries this and also adds an unbelievable amount of creepiness to the atmosphere are the vocals. The fact that everyone does vocals on here and that constant layering and panning and different vocal takes, like it's all, you know, distorted. There's a lot of reverb on it. It's cavernous, but you have like different levels. Like they create a wall of sound with just the vocals, and then you have the music too. So it's just this horrifying sound half the time. But at the same time, as you get more into this, or as you listen to this more, just kind of block out some time in your schedule because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
It opens up with melody. And again, melody, big quotations, asterisks. This is, you know, dissonant, atonal, nightmarish death metal, so don't think it's going to sound pretty. But it does sound catchier. Songs like the Protanthrofuge, I think I got that right. That sounds made up. And Argentum Mortifiction, pretty sure I nailed that one first try. There's a good amount of like just brutal, straightforward, chuggy riffing in there, mixed in with like these huge atmospheric swells, but lead melodies. They actually kind of like contribute something a little bit more like epic and sinister. I got some stuff that kind of sounded a bit like Nile in there.
And a more melodic lead too, especially in Argentum Mortifiction. That one actually had straightforward melody in it, like instead of the usual dive bombs, because most of the leads in here are just dive bombs and just running your fingers across the fretboard as fast as you can while sweep picking, like nonsensical lead work for the most part, except in that song.
I mean, the leads generally are there for like, again, like another layer of atmosphere. It's frequent dive bombs. Like, you know, any moment they can squeeze in a dive bomb on top of an atonal riff and a growling demon, they do it. But this constant, like, almost chaotic style, it works. Like, the whole mood on here, it never leaves the creep factor. Like, this sounds like someone scored the actual apocalypse. And that especially shows up on the longer tracks, like Flail Ferregum? I don't know if I'm saying that one right. But that's the longest track of the album at 11 minutes and 24 seconds, and it is an absolute beatdown, but there are sections on it where it kind of opens up the atmosphere. You get some creepy whispered vocals, and when it comes down to like the rhythms on here, again, they're like frequently off time and, you know, kind of jarring, but how they do the vocals on top of them, you get this off-time chant.
Yeah.
And admittedly, the first time I listened to this, I was listening to it on Spotify, and luckily I don't pay for Spotify, so I get the ad breaks, because it snapped me right out of it after that one, because I was like probably nodding to myself, going, and all of a sudden I was hearing a commercial for vodka. I was like, oh, whew, I'm back on the planet. Around the middle of that song, though, there's this big atmospheric swell, and, you know, that quieter-ish moment to kind of let you like settle down a bit and kind of take in the scenery, which is a nightmarish hellscape. Honestly, I feel like if I fell asleep to this album, I would probably be scared that I would wake up in A, another dimension, or B, surrounded by partially eaten corpses. Kind of the same with the last two tracks, Viabissum and Antitonement. Is it like anti-atonement? I don't know. Whatever. I don't know what a lot of these words mean. I've never actually seen a lot of these words before. Makes me think they're a little made up. Either way, the last two tracks there are two of the longest tracks as well. In fact, the last two tracks account for about 23 minutes of the album. And they're a little bit more drawn out in terms of like more riffy sections. Like the atmosphere kind of takes a break and it kind of lets the riffs breathe a bit. And honestly, like, the riffs are just as terrifying as the atmosphere because, man, they are heavy.
I just, some of the heaviest riffing I think I've heard in a very long time. There's no way to really say how heavy it is until you listen to it. And the fact that they do kind of draw the atmosphere up a little bit and just show you what they're capable of as far as brutal riffing is concerned. Just absolutely disgusting, especially the last track, Antitonement. That one I think has the most brutal riffs on it and has equally the lesser atmosphere. One of the first words I wrote was, "Holy fuck, that's heavy." And it doesn't let up. Some of the heaviest riffs on this album, period, are on that track.
There are points where it doesn't even sound like they're like picking the guitars, like they're taking a grinder to the fretboard and just recording it. And then there's also extra instrumentation on here. I actually, looked it up, and there are timpani drums kind of like scattered all over this album, and I don't know, they kind of just adds the epic evilness. You also have flutes, bone horns, and rattles that are also made out of bones, because why not? And just some interesting ones like, I don't know, a mortar, chains, and a scythe. But all that is like kind of utilized in the background to create this like horrific din. And yeah, all right, I could definitely make some Portal comparisons, but here's the thing. I find this way more listenable than Portal, where Portal thrives in pretty much just the atmosphere. It's hard to kind of latch on to riffs with that band because, well, sometimes they're just not there. This band has riffs, and they're really intricate and very technical, but they're also just flat out savage. We've already made some comparisons to Immolation, but also think bands like Titan Blood, Triumvir Foul, I would even say like Mithras. So it's like bludgeoning heavy and dark, but there's a lot of like cool intricacy when you like really kind of like sit down and kind of break this down, which I definitely spent a lot of time with this one. And I don't know, man, it may have changed me a little bit inside, because I feel like it kind of took my soul and put it through a meat grinder, but it had the courtesy of feeding it back to me.
Of course, I know we already mentioned brutal tracks, but I can keep going because there's 17 songs on this record. Songs like The Crucitome, which I think, even though this record is steeped in evil, I think the riffs on this album are particularly sinister. Got a lot of Morbid Angel vibes, but not like typical Morbid Angel riffing. It was more like the beginning to Caesar's Palace. That had just kind of like those low drones, because the beginning of the song just has a lot of like open chord, low droning. And the vocals in there, again, well, particularly evil, were more screamed than growled, because a lot of this is growls in the forefront and then all this other crazy shit behind it, whispers and screams and whatnot. But in this case, the growls kind of took a backseat, and these higher pitched, like, tortured screams come out, and it's just like, man, dude, as if I'm already not horrified enough by this, let's just throw in someone being tortured to death. And then Ignis Caucus, easy to use, fun to say.
Could be Cacus. I don't know.
Has some like broken up triplet grooves and a blasty D beat.
Dude, I couldn't explain to you what they were doing and that song at certain points. Like, it's almost like a grindy technical fit. Like, it's the only song on here where I would say it's like kind of closer to Defeated Sanity, but it's not recorded like a Defeated Sanity album.
It had like the beginnings of a D beat, but it had blast tags on it. And when they brought that beat in, they brought it in on a different beat every measure. Just the way they kind of mixed that all up was fucking crazy.
And it's only about 2 minutes long, so it is like the most condensed, just kind of straightforward, brutal, technical song on there.
And then the third track, the Erapthicide, I think that's how you say that. I've never seen that word before in my entire life.
Same.
I don't want to say that this record is all balls to the wall nonstop. Most of it is. But there are moments where it does slow down and groove. And then the Erapthicide, again, I don't know if I fucked it up, kind of starts out kind of doomy. And the whole vibe of that track and the whole speed, I found to just be overall slower. Like, they kind of took their time with it and just filled it full of these big lurching riffs. And again, some of the most disgusting tremolos I think I've ever heard. And that's really across this album, too. I think this band got in a contest and decided, like, what's the heaviest, gnarliest, atonal, harmonized tremolo you can come up with? And they said, I got one. They said, I got one, too. And then they put it all on this record. And it really is disturbing. It's gross.
Yeah, there's really no mercy, no reprieve on this album. And to an extent, I really dig that. Like, especially on the full-on tracks. And yeah, I'm going to be complaining about interludes because there are a fair amount of them. And while they do kind of break up this album because it kind of flows like one continuous track, some of them just felt a little bit unnecessary, or they really didn't like do much in the way of transitioning. Like, you know, the opening track does a good job of kind of setting the pace. It's creepy, it's haunting, it's backwards, and then they prove that it's even more freaky played forwards. But as the album went on, I was kind of just like, listen, we don't need any more interlude tracks. This album's already long. And granted, they don't take up that much time, but some of them kind of drag. And one of my issues was the kind of two-parter that is the song that is just simply parentheses and then the title track. And they're both essentially interludes. The song that's just the parentheses it's noise, it's static. I don't know. It sounds like someone was working at the airport and loading luggage right by one of the plane engines and it's like, you know what? I'm just going to record some stuff. And then the title track is also that, except Satan shows up to work and starts whispering in your ear about killing your family because you're disappointing him because you haven't done it yet.
Also backwards. And
all that's going on while you're just trying to finish up your shift and just load these assholes' luggage onto the plane. It was at this point I was just like, okay, no more of this. Like, this doesn't need to be like a standalone little atmospheric piece. Like, you know, that could have been like yeeted off the album, and it really wouldn't have put a dent in the time, but it probably would have, you know, put like a dent in the enjoyability, because I just didn't find anything really particularly engaging about that. Granted, when it caps off with the two long tracks on here, absolutely amazing work on there. But yeah, like the additional atmosphere stuff, it's already creepy. There's atmosphere all throughout this in every single song. You didn't need to sprinkle more creepy on it. Like, seriously, I kind of want to, like, you know, see this played at like the DMV when people are stuck in line just as a social experiment. I wonder how long it will take before people start like tearing out their eyes and screaming. It could be a lot of fun.
That's fair. I actually now kind of want to see that. I don't know how we'll make that happen. I'm pretty sure we'll be arrested, to be honest with you. But if we were to try it, it would be a fun experiment for sure.
It's either that or a dentist's office or a daycare center. I don't know. I have ideas. But overall, I actually really enjoyed this. Like, this is like an absolutely punishing listen from start to stop, but it's really engaging. It's really interesting. And I actually found a lot of moments to latch onto. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I think it is definitely more than a bit long in the tooth, but honestly, like, it's just a weird, hellish, nightmarish journey, and you kind of got to see it to the end to really get like the full experience. I've listened to this 3 times, and yeah, I feel like the bones in my ears have disintegrated courtesy of this album, but it's just absolutely monolithically heavy. And it's not just, you know, about like being sonically heavy and distant. There's like a lot of really awesome playing on here and creative song structure. Yeah, this is not a starter death metal album or blackened death metal album. You need, like, you know, some training before this one. Like, this is not one like, oh man, you know, I've been listening to Cannibal Corpse and Obituary, I can handle this. You might not be able to. Who knows? You might. But this is just an absolutely insane listen. If you're a big fan, again, of Titan Blood, I throw in Abyssal, and Portal too, I guess, and Immolation for sure. Check this album out. Absolutely awesome.
I 100% agree. It's 4 stars for me as well. First of all, I'm pretty sure that my chug and dissonance quota has been met for the year, possibly for even next year. I don't know how it gets a whole lot heavier than this. Absolutely savage riffs at all times. Again, the tremolos are the grossest thing I've ever heard. Props to this band for figuring out that many disgusting atonal harmonies and tremolos and then making them descend at like all times and then putting stuff over it. I don't know. The whispers, the constant growls, some of the deepest, most demonic growls I think I've ever heard are in this record, and that's a bold statement, but they're in there, I promise you. It's groovy. I never stop banging my head. As crazy as it all is, it's very listenable, albeit this is not a starter record. I know we've mentioned that. I'm going to mention it again. This is probably not where you want to start if you're going to get into blackened death metal, or really even just heavy music in general. For those of you that like this stuff, this album is fucking fantastic. Long, yes, but it's kind of like an all-encompassing journey. Like, you have to listen to this from start to finish to get the full effect. And even though it's long, it's worth that journey, because by the time you get to the end, you're like, Jesus Christ. If you're a fan of bands like Immolation, Fossilization, Blue DOS, Nord, Morbid Angel, Suffocation, the band Miko, I don't know if you ever heard of them, probably check this out. I had a really great time. I really, really dig this band.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and we're going to start doing some streams at some point this month for like a members-only one that is our only perk outside of 2 booger trolls now, as well as a devil and a star. We added stars as an emoji in there, so now you can like kind of put up your own ratings, you know, in the live chat or whatever, or in the comments. I think you can do that too. I don't know. I really don't know how all this operates, but I do know that this is, you know, our new way of, you know, helping support the channel. It kind of helps us out with StreamYard raising their prices, and eventually, you know, hopefully going to get us away from Patreon altogether. But yeah, if you would like to join, there's a join button down below. We also still have our store link down below too. T-shirts, hats, all that stuff. And yeah, if you'd like to help out either way, down below.
And of course, tons of stuff going on at Thralls of Metal. You guys already know the drill. Album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, Nick's never-ending collection updates, a bunch of really cool live streams. All this stuff we do for you guys. We genuinely appreciate all of our fans. In fact, it's crazy to think that this channel is soon going to be at 20,000 subscribers, and that blows my mind. We couldn't have done it without you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. Again, I'm working on stuff for a giveaway for 20,000 subscribers because I feel like we should.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just absolutely amazing doing this, and a ton more content coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys absolutely rule, and we will catch you later.